Although she was only the daughter of a village tailor who sold vests, she was taught the favorite subjects of wealthy heiresses from a young age. She learned to play the piano and study English. The reason for these opportunities was that, as a child, Yumi met a foreign military couple. When they came to her parents' shop to have clothes tailored, Yumi had the chance to meet the wife. The woman was amazed by Yumi's intelligence, so she often brought Yumi to her home and taught her some hobbies of the upper-class aristocracy. This wonderful encounter seemed like the stroke of luck that changed Yumi's life. But the officer's wife was a vain woman. Living in a remote village in Korea made her feel lonely, so to achieve an upper-class lifestyle, she began deceiving everyone around her by claiming she was an aristocrat and the biological sister of Princess Diana. This helped her attract attention and gain the respect of everyone. Not only that, but she also taught Yumi how to lie and deceive. She taught Yumi to always remain calm. That is the trump card, so that no one can see through your heart. That way, you will be invincible. Sometime after that, the officer and his wife left. Before leaving, the wife advised Yumi, "Remember what I told you? You must keep a calm face in any situation." Yumi ingrained this statement in her mind throughout her growing up years. Relying on her own excellence and calm face, Yumi made those around her believe in her useless lies. But when Yumi was in high school, she had her first love. Her peaceful life was completely disrupted. Just a few months before the university entrance exam, the school suddenly discovered that she had feelings for the music teacher. The teacher-student romance was a serious violation of school rules. To save his current job, the music teacher blamed everything on Yumi. He said she had approached and seduced him. Yumi felt extremely heartbroken. This was the first time she met someone who could lie so skillfully. She was hurt by someone else's lie. Eventually, the music teacher was only temporarily suspended, but Yumi had to urgently transfer schools. One early morning, she had to leave her hometown in despair with her father to go to Seoul for school because of the ban violation during the university entrance exam. The new school initially did not want to accept Yumi, but considering her excellent grades, they made an exception. The teacher's request, Yumi should not make friends and focus on her studies. Her father found her a room to live in and then left Seoul. Far from her familiar hometown, Yumi lost her usual routine. Surrounded by no opportunities to build relationships, Yumi had no relatives or friends and fell into despair. Her eyes also no longer had their inherent confidence. Her grades declined rapidly, and she could not enter university. After receiving the university entrance exam results, Yumi was immersed in despair because she did not get admitted. Her father called to inform her that her mother had Alzheimer's disease and advised Yumi to visit her when she had time. He also gently inquired about the university entrance exam results. Yumi could not tell the truth that she had failed the exam. After much struggle, she lied again and told her father that she had been accepted into university. So, her father sent gifts and money to her, wanting to turn her lie into truth. She spent a lot of money preparing for the university entrance exam. She rented a room and stayed with a girl named Ji-won, who was a university student. She also told her that she was attending University B. Ji-won knew Yumi was attending the same university as her, so she acted very friendly. She even invited Yumi to join the school's editorial club. However, Yumi refused. Ji-won did not doubt Yumi. She just thought Yumi was shy. When she saw the vibrant university campus, Yumi also longed to be a student. That day, after Yumi finished her retake class, Ji-won invited her to the editorial club to eat pizza and meet other students. There, the girls gathered together, happily chatting. Yumi deeply desired this feeling. She could no longer contain herself and began to lie. When someone asked about Yumi's hometown, she said, "I lived in the US when I was young." This made everyone admire her. Such praises were the only things that could make Yumi happy, but they didn't know that this shy girl was a master of deceit. Ji-won found Yumi very cute and shy, so she gave her an exclusive editorial club t-shirt. Not long after, Yumi finished the retake and continued to participate in the university entrance exam. As soon as she finished the exam, Yumi collapsed on the desk in sorrow, afraid that this time she would not get into university. While walking home, Ji-won called to invite Yumi to join the editorial club's meeting. In this lively gathering, the beautiful Yumi received a lot of attention. The male students surrounded her, making her very happy. That very night, Yumi met a boy named Kong, and then she fell in love with him. A few days later, the instructor of the exam preparation class called Yumi and advised her not to aim for a university as difficult to get into as University B, or she might fail again. However, Yumi would rather retake the exam a third time than attend a less prestigious university. After Yumi and Kong had been in love for a while, One day Kong told her that he had a chance to be an exchange student in New York. He could not bear to part with Yumi, so he proposed that she go with him. After graduation, they would get married. He had already mentioned Yumi to his mother, and his family also wanted to meet her. Yumi was also happy and excited, but studying abroad required a lot of money. Yumi had no choice but to return home and ask her father for help. Her father tried to scrape together enough money for his daughter to study abroad. However, fate had other plans for Yumi. At the airport, Kong received a call from his mother, who said everything about Yumi was fake. There was no one named Yumi on the student list of University B, and she wanted her son to stay away from such a liar. After the plane took off, Yumi left the airport alone and returned to her dilapidated rental house. She felt sorry for her fate. One morning, she received a call from a neighbor in her hometown. They informed her that her father had passed away from cancer. Everyone wanted to tell Yumi before she went to America, but they did not want to affect her future, so they kept it from her. Yumi returned to her hometown with bags of luggage and knelt before her father's coffin, crying bitterly. She deeply regretted that a lie had caused her to miss the chance to see her father one last time. After her father passed away, Yumi began selling clothes at his vest shop. When she looked through the accounting books, she discovered that her parents had been frugal all their lives. All the massive expenses were for her. This made Yumi feel even sadder. After returning to Seoul, lacking any academic qualifications, she had to make a living by doing odd jobs in many places. And so, a few years went by. One day, she saw a job posting online, stating they were recruiting without discriminating against educational qualifications. So, she went to the workplace address to apply. It was an art exhibition company run by a family. The president was Arthur Lee. Yumi's job was to serve the president's daughter, Lee-ru. Arthur Lee had no other requirements for Yumi. She just needed to keep her promises and work hard. Lee-ru's mother was a devout believer who often gathered with her sisters at home to pray. Lee-ru had just returned from the United States. She was lively and free-spirited, not fitting in with the conservative lifestyle of her family. One day, Lee-ru and her mother planned to meet a friend. Her mother thought Lee-ru's outfit was too revealing, so she asked Yumi to get her some more formal clothes. It was Yumi's first time entering Lee-ru's room. The transparent glass windows from ceiling to floor were enormous and amazed her. The dazzling dressing room made the space look even more luxurious. Yumi had never experienced such a life. At that moment, she saw a beautiful pair of high heels on the floor. She tried on the shoes and found they fit her slender feet perfectly. The elegant shoes and everything else were what she dreamed of, but none of them belonged to her. Lee-ru's life was a realistic version of Yumi's dream. Everything she wanted was in front of her, but she could not reach her dream. Looking at Lee-ru's beautiful life, although Lee-ru occasionally gave Yumi something, like a watch she no longer liked, it was not out of care or friendship, but more like charity for the lower class. Not only Lee-ru, but even Arthur Lee also looked down on servants. Every time Yumi asked for leave, it was like standing in front of a gun barrel. Arthur Lee hated it when employees took leave and would call them stupid and lazy. That is why they always lived at the bottom of society. Class always created a gap between people. These words hurt Yumi deeply, but she still had to smile and serve Lee-ru. Lee-ru was in a bad mood because of her marriage issues, so she planned to fly abroad for a vacation. She also told Yumi that she was not happy, which made Yumi's heart ache. If one could feel so unhappy even under these circumstances, what could Yumi's current life be called? Yumi took Lee-ru's American passport and saw that her English name was Anna. Seeing that the visa would expire in a month, Yumi mentioned this to Lee-ru. However, Lee-ru dropped the passport on the ground and told Yumi to renew it. These trivial matters should not be mentioned to her. It only irritated her. Yumi picked up the passport and laughed emotionlessly. Inside her, a long-suppressed anger was burning. The years of suffering had changed her. In Yumi's mind, she had been longing for an illusory life for too long. That night, Yumi took the money from the art gallery and Lee-ru's American passport. She left this art museum while it was snowing. She decided to pursue what she wanted at any cost. Just like her childhood motto, if it's something I want to do, I'll definitely do it. After escaping from the art gallery, Yumi returned to her hometown to visit her mother. The next morning, she turned on her phone and ignored a series of missed calls and messages looking for her. When she saw Ji-won's name, she called back. In Ji-won's eyes, Yumi's image hadn't collapsed yet, so she wanted to take advantage of Ji-won. As expected, Ji-won introduced Yumi to a good job, becoming a teacher at an art exam training center. When filling out the personal information form, Yumi opened Lee-ru's passport, filled in all the details, and used Liru's English name, Anna. Before the interview, Yumi tried to style her hair like a wealthy lady, rented a set of designer clothes, and created a perfect facade for herself. With Ji-won's introduction, along with Liru's credentials, she quickly gained the trust of the art exam center's supervisor. She could start teaching right away. When returning the designer clothes to the store, Yumi used the watch Liru had given her to trade. The clerk told her that this brand had been involved in a counterfeit scandal in recent years, and the watch had become infamous in the industry, with no one wanting to use it. At that moment, Yumi understood why Liru gave it to her, because it was trash that Liru no longer used. This humiliation was something Yumi could never forget. She would never allow herself to be trampled on again. For her new job and to establish herself, Yumi applied to change her name to Anna. She went to various overseas study centers, using her status as a consultant to learn more about the industry. Then she passed on the information to her students. This made her appear extremely professional. Yumi's intelligence and natural acting skills deceived everyone she interacted with. One night, her neighbor called to inform her that, due to a government road construction project, her father's vest shop would be seized, and Yumi would receive compensation. She used part of the money to place her mother in a nursing home and rented a better apartment in Seoul with the rest. She also bought several sets of fake designer clothes to continue maintaining her luxurious lifestyle. While working at the tutoring class, Yumi met a beautiful girl who was a classmate of Liru in America. The beautiful girl had heard of Liru, but had never met her. Therefore, she did not doubt Yumi's identity. Even though Yumi did not have an academic degree, she was a very good teacher. The students she tutored managed to get into universities successfully. Because of this ability, fewer people questioned her identity. 2 more years passed like that, and Yumi gradually perfected herself through lies and her acting skills. One day, teacher Jun came to see Yumi and wanted to invite her to become a liberal arts teacher at a famous school. Being able to sit in this position would create another layer of cover for her. However, Jun made it clear that this was not a free introduction. Yumi had to pay a sum of money to get this opportunity. She had no choice but to move from renting a whole house annually to a smaller room and renting it monthly. Jun took Yumi to meet the prestigious school board. Elegant and with a beautiful resume, Yumi successfully passed the interview. After becoming a lecturer at a prestigious university, she also became a respected professor. Yumi worked very hard, memorizing classic literary works. In every class, she presented herself as knowledgeable and erudite. Her beautiful appearance and friendly teaching style made Professor Yumi's reputation grow. The number of students enrolling in her classes also continued to increase. Other professors, seeing how talented she was and still single, wanted to matchmake her. Some even introduced Yumi to the director of a company. Yumi met Ji-hoon in a luxurious room. The first time they met, Ji-hoon boasted about his financial background and artistic taste. However, given Yumi's character, she was not impressed with Ji-hoon's taste. He asked her about the chair in the room, using her skills. She replied that it was a fake. Yumi used the excuse of not wanting to marry yet to refuse Ji-hoon. But he did not give up. He asked Yumi to meet him at least 3 times, and if nothing progressed between them, he would respect her decision. Although Yumi agreed to his request, she still felt that Ji-hoon lacked intelligence and reliability. The essence of a person who just became wealthy is that they only know how to brag. And that turned out to be true. Ji-won told Yumi that Ji-hoon started from scratch, increasing his net worth through stock speculation. Although he was in the field of information technology, he had no academic qualifications. It was only after having money that he attended college. After learning about Ji-hoon's background, Yumi felt pity for him. She wanted to see herself and Ji-hoon from a different perspective as people who were similar. Both were people without academic qualifications who gradually climbed up to the upper class. Thinking like that, Yumi suddenly felt that she could accept Ji-hoon. She began to treat him more kindly. After that, the two quickly started dating and soon entered the stage of discussing marriage. One day, Yumi visited her mother, who communicated in sign language that she had dreamed of Yumi crying a lot. It was as if she wanted to go somewhere far away. Yumi sadly looked at her mother. She would not be going to a faraway place, but getting married. Due to her fake identity, her parents could not attend Yumi's wedding. Even her parents were actors that Yumi hired. Soon after, Ji-hoon and Yumi held a grand wedding. At this point, she officially entered the upper class, becoming the director's wife. When taking family photos at the wedding, Ji-hoon's father called up his nephew to join the photo. The boy was a child with autism. As soon as he saw the bouquet in Yumi's hand, he repeatedly talked about various topics he had memorized. After getting married, Yumi became the most eye-catching decoration beside Ji-hoon. Starting from nothing, with no qualifications, He became the director of a large company and married a wife who graduated from a prestigious university. It is indeed a sense of pride, just like most other entrepreneurs. When Ji-hoon's wealth accumulated to a certain extent, he wanted to gain fame. He took Yumi everywhere, attending gatherings of the wealthy. He wanted to enter the field of politics. Even though Yumi always accompanied him, she still hoped Ji-hoon would not enter politics. One day, they attended an art scholarship award ceremony. The next speaker was a mute girl. Since the sign language teacher did not arrive on time, Yumi volunteered to translate for the girl. Seeing the girl so nervous, Yumi comforted her using sign language. Only Yumi could understand the girl's language here. Everyone else could not understand sign language. Yumi's words made the girl laugh, and she stood on stage and spoke. Yumi helped translate her speech. After the speech, the girl hugged Yumi tightly, which attracted cheers from the audience and media. Ji-hoon was very satisfied with Yumi because the successful politician needed this the most. That evening, Yumi returned home, and while in the elevator, a girl entered. It was Liru. Yumi's face immediately turned to fear, and she began to lower her head to avoid Liru's gaze. But Liru still saw Yumi's face. After thinking for a while, she finally asked, "Is that Yumi?" But Yumi avoided her, not daring to respond at all. At this moment, her usual elegance and intellect were gone. Upon reaching home, Yumi squatted down in fear, panting heavily. From that day on, Yumi started to feel insecure. The appearance of Liru caused Yumi's elegant and scholarly facade to show signs of cracking. What worried her more was that Liru seemed to be living in the same building as her. She immediately asked those who had worked at Liru's house before. They told her that the writer Lee had passed away last year. His company was also on the brink of bankruptcy. Due to her divorce, Liru recently returned to the country, intending to develop in the fashion industry. As for whether she would go abroad again, no one knew. This information intensified Yumi's sense of crisis. The next day, as soon as she got home, she persuaded Ji-hoon to move, because she wanted to live in a house with windows to connect with nature. But Ji-hoon's view of the house was that its value should reflect their status in the upper class. The current house met his desires, so, of course, Yumi's request was rejected. Feeling helpless, Yumi turned to Ji-won, who she was friendly with because they had lived together before. Ji-won was eager to work in the political department of the meteor. Yumi always remembers Ji-won's help to deal with her, so she asked Ji-hoon to help introduce Ji-won. Ji-hoon said he could fulfill it, but everything had a price. In return, he wanted Yumi to mingle with the wives of other legislators to build relationships. Although Yumi didn't like it, she had no choice but to agree. Even though Ji-hoon wanted to get into politics and always had an upright slogan, his private life showed his arrogant and domineering personality. He would ignore neighbors' complaints and use drills at night. He would also yell at the driver for being late by just a few minutes due to traffic caused by an accident. His mouth spouted moral teachings to his servants, just like Writer Lee in the past. This scene really made Yumi uncomfortable, as if recalling herself from the old days. One day, a former student whom Yumi tutored came to see her, bringing along American-style snacks that Yumi had once mentioned she loved. Yumi gently thanked the student, but inside, she felt conflicted because Ji-hoon refused to move houses. To avoid running into Liru, Yumi had to use the stairs every day, but once a crack appears in the protective shell, it only grows larger. As Yumi stepped out of the stairs that day, she saw Liru holding a letter from a university. She asked, "What's this about?" The school on the envelope was clearly the one Liru had attended. The English name Anna had also become Yumi's name in her professor's file. Under Liru's interrogation, Yumi had no choice but to recount the entire story. She knelt before Liru, pleading that she would stop if Liru gave her a little more time. But Liru had no intention of forgiving Yumi because Yumi had stolen her life and was even living it better than she was. This was the price Yumi had to pay for her deceit. Liru demanded that Yumi prepare 3 billion won by next month, but this condition was like asking her to rob a bank. Although Yumi was a director's wife, in reality, she was merely an ornament for Ji-hoon. But Liru did not care about that. She only cared about the outcome. Before leaving, she also instructed Yumi to continue using the stairs and not to loiter around in front of her. One evening, Ji-hoon drank with a group of politicians. After reaching the parking lot, he was drunk and lay in the car. The building security called Yumi to come down and take Ji-hoon home. But when Yumi arrived, she saw another woman in the passenger seat. She immediately shut the car door, turned around, and called the police, saying, "Someone's drunk and still trying to drive." In another scene, Ji-won had just joined the media department of the newsroom. She was drinking with her colleagues, because she had relied on connections to get the job and was the only woman there. So, the whole night, she was mocked by her male colleagues. But Ji-won did not lose her composure. After the party, she watched the drunken shadows of her colleagues with confidence. After that, no one dared to underestimate her anymore. Early the next morning, while having breakfast, Yumi asked Ji-hoon, "Why did the police look for you?" Ji-hoon avoided the question and talked about setting up a scholarship fund with Yumi as the chairwoman. This meant that from now on, Yumi would frequently appear in the media. Instinctively, she refused. But Ji-hoon said that money and power had to be shown to the public to be meaningful, especially during elections. Even Ji-hoon and Yumi's daily breathing would be judged by society. Hearing this, Yumi did not resist anymore. At that moment, the woman who was with Ji-hoon last night unlocked the door and entered the house. Ji-hoon said, "From today onwards, she will come and go with the secretary." When the secretary saw Yumi, she immediately introduced herself sarcastically. Her name was also Yumi. To come up with a 3 billion won that Li-ru demanded, Yumi began to rack her brains. One day, the housemaid asked for leave for the next day. But the next day was the day Ji-hoon was preparing to invite politicians to dinner. This situation naturally made Yumi even more frustrated. She had always been a gentle person, but suddenly shouted angrily. She could not help but utter words similar to what Ryder Lee and Ji-hoon had once said. Why do people from lower classes always cause more trouble for their employers? As the harsh words came out, Yumi realized she had unknowingly despised the poor. Even if it was a crucial reason in life for a maid, it was not as important as the daily food and drink of the upper class. When Yumi lost her temper, the secretary quietly appeared without anyone noticing. Seeing her, Yumi gradually calmed down. In the end, Yumi agreed to the maid's leave request. The secretary came to pick up Yumi to attend a party together. On the way, she chatted with the secretary. Yumi asked, "It must be tough working beside Ji-hoon, right?" But as soon as the secretary spoke, she only uttered flattering words about the director. Yumi calmly replied, "It turns out everyone knows how to lie. Ji-hoon is a person she knows all too well." The car parked outside the restaurant, but the secretary did not rush to let Yumi out. She wanted to check if the guests had arrived. This action reminded Yumi of the old days when she served Li-ru, often helping her with errands, making sure all the guests were present. The secretary at this moment was a miniature version of Yumi from the past. Tonight is the dinner party for the politicians. Ji-hoon just made a bold declaration over the drinks table. Seconds later, the secretary received a call and quietly whispered to him. The joy on Ji-hoon's face gradually faded. Today, Ji-won and Kang met up. Previously, when Kang had just returned from the US, the two had made contact. But today, he was the one who took the initiative to reach out. There was something he felt he had to say to Ji-won. As soon as he sat down, Kang took out his phone. On it was a news article about Ji-hoon and Yumi. Kang asked, "Is this Yumi, his girlfriend from back then?" Ji-won nodded. She thought Kang still remembered his past relationship. But unexpectedly, Kang told a shocking story. Yumi had never been a university student. She had failed the college entrance exam 3 times. When they were dating, he found out Yumi was a fraud. Hearing this, Ji-won was momentarily stunned. She asked him, "Is this true?" She was very close to Yumi, so she couldn't believe she was deceiving everyone. But Kang had grounds to say so. Ji-won adhered to her journalistic principles, pursuing the truth. She started investigating Yumi's background information. First, she called the university she had attended to check how many students were accepted that year with the name Yumi. The results showed that while there were many students named Yumi, none graduated with a major in fine arts. Ji-won then checked the name Anna and still found no such person. She went to the landlord of the place where she rented a room while in college. She heard many things that shocked her. The landlord was very impressed with Yumi because she still owed 2 months' rent when she hastily left for America. She even left behind a mess that the landlord had to clean up. Later, the landlord personally went to Yumi's hometown to find her father to demand the rent. According to the landlord's description, Yumi's hometown was a rural town. Her parents ran a clothing shop, and the family's economic situation was average. Following Yumi's life path, Ji-won went to the art class where Yumi used to work. The person in charge recalled Yumi's work performance. Her tutoring skills were excellent, helping many students get accepted into prestigious schools. If there was anything strange, it would only be Yumi's poor English. Ji-won asked to see the personal information that Yumi had submitted when she applied for the job, as well as her academic certificates. At this time, Yumi was caught in the predicament of earning money. She truly couldn't do anything. One day in the parking lot, Yumi saw Liru talking on the phone and then walking away into the garage. Yumi pressed the gas, desperately wanting the person to disappear for good. But as she was about to crash into Liru, Yumi lost her nerve. Instead, she was mocked by Liru. To fulfill her agreement with Ji-hoon, Yumi began to meet with the wives of the politicians to build relationships. Like the wives of other politicians, she was merely a tool for her husband to gain more power. The so-called closer relationships were only to help convey various transactions. Ji-hoo, being new to the political scene, naturally attracted many people bringing gifts. But Yumi did not enjoy this type of social interaction. She maintained a cold attitude towards the woman who came bearing gifts, even when the person offered Yumi 100 million won. That evening, in the parking lot, Yumi unexpectedly met Liru again. She directly gave her 100 million won, saying that she had done her best. But Liru didn't care, throwing the money to the ground. She said that if Yumi didn't have the money, she should ask her husband. If Yumi didn't know how to ask, she could help. Even though Liru threatened her, Yumi found a glimmer of hope in that statement. After returning home, she started listing the wives of the politicians she needed to meet. If everyone could give her money, she could get the 3 billion. After that, Yumi then changes her approach to the wives of congressmen. She tried her best to show her friendly side so that the wives would be satisfied with her. Seeing the bags of money these women brought, Yumi's heart gradually began to feel more at ease. Ji-won's investigation has reached the period of Yumi's high school years. She went to Yumi's hometown. Upon getting out of the car, she luckily entered a snack shop owned by a neighbor who had taken care of Yumi's mother for many years. Hearing Ji-won talk about Yumi, the woman's expression was filled with pride. The neighbor and Yumi's mother always thought Yumi was still in America. Following this lead, Ji-won went to Yumi's high school and learned about her past while she studied there. Yumi's appearance and grades were both excellent, but she loved the feeling of being in the spotlight too much. In her final year of high school, she got entangled in a relationship with a young teacher, suffered a major blow, and was forced to transfer to Seoul. The teacher recalled several times when Yumi returned from Seoul and cried all night at her house. Early in the morning, she would catch the first bus back to Seoul. Yumi is a girl who grew up with compliments. Without them, she becomes insecure and weak. So the teacher was also curious about what kind of person Yumi had become now. At this moment, Ji-won received a call from the company. She was asked to spend the evening meeting Ji-hoon. Ji-won wanted to refuse, but when she heard that it was Ji-hoon who had referred her for the job, she hurried back to meet him. As soon as she sat down, Ji-hoon presented her with a gift. Inside was some exclusive information from a competitor. He wanted Ji-won to be grateful for his introduction, to become his warrior to eliminate his enemies in the media field. This would help him eliminate obstacles. It would also greatly benefit Ji-won's career, but Ji-won did not lose her composure. This made Ji-won feel humiliated. After all, her principle as a journalist was to seek the truth, not to make money. Ji-won immediately put down the documents, clearly intending to reject Ji-hoon. Seeing this, he did not get angry. He just felt that she still hadn't experienced the pain of being oppressed in society. You shouldn't make your career difficult just because of cheap self-esteem. You should learn from Yumi. No matter how outstanding she was still just a university professor. Only by seizing the opportunity to marry him could she have a wealthy life. Hearing Ji-hoon's arrogant words, Ji-won felt disgusted. After leaving, Ji-won received Yumi's resume. An email from a foreign university confirmed that there was someone named Anna with credentials from their school. Now, Ji-won was genuinely confused. Who is Yumi? Today, Liru's daughter and husband returned from abroad. She went to the airport to pick them up. Even though the flight was delayed by an hour, she was still very unhappy with her husband. All her life, Liru had been a princess who got whatever she wanted. She had never had to care about what others thought. Her daughter was the only person truly important to her. Liru and her husband were going through divorce procedures. As soon as she saw her daughter, she hugged her joyfully and left, leaving her mother and husband to carry the luggage. Her husband just wanted to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible. That way, he wouldn't have to see Liru again. After her daughter returned to Seoul, she began buying many toys and clothes for her. She happily brought her daughter back home to play with her. In reality, Liru's life after returning to her country was not smooth. Her life was only about spending money without earning any. Since the death of the writer Lee, she had almost lost all the family's assets. She even borrowed 3 billion won with real estate as collateral behind her mother's back. This is exactly why she was determined to demand 3 billion from Yumi. Not long after, Ji-hoon was nominated as a candidate for the mayor of Seoul. Yumi went on stage to present flowers to her husband, capturing a happy family photo in front of the camera. The campaign team chanted the name Anna, but she just sat beside Ji-hoon calmly, not feeling any joy at all. Ji-hoon and his teammates stayed up all night to celebrate. Yumi couldn't stand it any longer, so she left early. After the secretary took her home, she hurried back to the party. Her biological clock must be in sync with Ji-hoon's. Entering the elevator, the tired secretary sat down on the floor. Yumi, at home, also didn't have the energy to shower. She lay straight on the ground and fell asleep. Whether in the upper class or among ordinary people, the name Yumi has always been a symbol of vanity. Beneath the bright exterior was always a miserable soul, trampled by money and power. The next day, Yumi woke up and continued to meet with many other ladies. The number of people giving her gifts kept increasing. Yumi only needed to chat a little and could easily collect a large amount of money. This made her question whether her life had changed. In the evening, Yumi went to a pharmacy to buy digestive medicine and saw on TV that a 30-year-old woman had died by carbon monoxide poisoning in her car. Yumi happened to pass by the place where the accident occurred and couldn't help but feel emotional. If she hadn't dreamed of a high-class life, she might not have embarked on this path. When she entered the apartment building, she no longer took the stairs, but pressed the elevator button instead. Yumi went home and watched the news about a 30-year-old woman who had gone to heaven by burning charcoal, and that person was none other than Liru. She recalled the scene where Liru blackmailed her before. Before leaving, Liru had asked Yumi to keep taking the stairs and not to appear in front of her. Yumi concluded that Liru couldn't have committed suicide. Ji-hoon returned home shortly after that. He questioned Yumi about why she hadn't attended his campaign that day. She said she was busy teaching. In campaign activities, I only need to sit there silently like a vase. Even if I am absent, it's not a big deal. Ji-hoon was not pleased with Yumi's attitude. He asked her to quit her job at the center. This made Yumi feel like she was just another employee under Ji-hoon's command. She said, "The last time you fired a driver, you said similar things." Seeing Yumi openly defying him and not being obedient like before, Yumi had no intention of listening to him. Seeing this, Ji-hoon sent his secretary to Yumi. But, in fact, he wanted to monitor her activities. The next day, Ji-hoon and his wife attended the foundation establishment event for the scholarship fund. Yumi had a successful speech on stage. This greatly increased Ji-hoon's media coverage. She received applause. Additionally, Ji-hoon had several other speeches expressing his political ideals. One passionate speech immediately ignited the audience. Finally, Ji-hoon even knelt to thank the people, showing his political determination to serve the country and its people. Besides cooperating with Ji-hoon and participating in numerous campaign activities, Yumi also had her own life. She enjoyed her teaching time at the center. That day, after teaching, Yumi suddenly received the news that Ji-hoon would continue to run for election, so she would have to temporarily stop teaching. As soon as Yumi heard this, she knew Ji-hoon was behind it. Finally, she reluctantly signed a temporary leave under the name Inner. The female secretary had completely worked with Yumi. Yumi ordered her to investigate the address of the fired driver and other employees who were dismissed without clear reasons. The secretary didn't know why she was doing this, but Yumi didn't say anything, just asked her to keep it secret and not reveal it to Ji-hoon. After a while, Yumi went to meet the driver. Recently, she had been frequently contacting the dismissed employees, wanting to learn about Ji-hoon's little-known secrets through them. But the driver had signed a confidentiality agreement, so he didn't dare to disclose any information. Yumi persuaded him. A man like Ji-hoon, who is very different from how he appears on the outside, is unworthy of being the mayor of Seoul. Meanwhile, Ji-won was directed by a colleague to an old website selling Anna's graduation album from her former school abroad. After viewing it, Ji-won noticed that the name Anna was actually Liru, so she contacted Anna's schoolmates. The person also remembered Anna had two names. Her Korean name was Liru, and her English name was Anna. The classmate also said Liru had been living in Boston and only returned to South Korea last year to file for a divorce. Additionally, this person mentioned something else. Liru previously hired someone to write her graduation thesis. Following this led on Liru. As a journalist, Ji-won went to the police station to ask for details about Liru's death. The police confirmed that Liru indeed committed suicide. She had trading debts, was about to get a divorce, had also been drinking for a long time, and frequently went to casinos. Moreover, Liru's mother mentioned that Liru had bipolar disorder. The next day was another beautiful day, and Yumi participated in a volunteer event. During the interview, she shined brightly in front of everyone. But after a busy day, Yumi sat helplessly in the car. She didn't want to return to that cold, empty house. The secretary handed over the tax files. The company was under investigation to Yumi. The two began to chat in the car. For the secretary, she could never understand the mindset of her employer. Yumi felt the same way. Feeling down, she borrowed a cigarette and lighter from the secretary and went home. Ji-won returned to the newsroom, observed everyone busy. Later, she found out that they had received hot news about Ji-hoon recently. He once had a wife and a child with autism. The boss took this headline and had everyone quickly write articles. At the same time, Ji-hoon also received the news and felt very annoyed. He ordered his subordinates to kneel to relieve his anger. After this revelation, his political career could end. There, while he was scolding, the phones of the employees rang simultaneously. It turned out there was more negative news about Yumi appearing on the internet. It pointed out that Yumi's thesis was fake. This made things worse. Ji-hoon called Yumi. He had found the person who wrote the thesis for her. A few hours later, that person would accept an interview and declare they never wrote for Yumi. She and Anna were research partners. For safety reasons, Ji-hoon requested Yumi not to appear in the media for the foreseeable future. She also needed to be more cautious with her words and actions, waiting for the storm to pass. From the conversation between the two, Yumi realized Ji-hoon already knew her identity. Ji-hoon no longer hid it. He even said Li-ru was quite brave for contacting him directly. After speaking, he gave a sinister smile. Yumi learned the shocking truth from his expression and suddenly became very frightened. Ji-hoon gestured for her to keep quiet and ordered the bodyguard to take Yumi home. When she arrived home, she didn't want to go upstairs for a long time. Suddenly, she heard Li-ru's voice. She slowly walked toward her. Li-ru talked about the origin of the name Anna. It turns out, when she was little, everyone praised her for looking like a princess, so they called her Anna. But coincidentally, Li-ru knew that Princess Anna, famous for going to heaven, had also been impersonated by others. Since then, she no longer used the name Anna. Yumi felt heartbroken because even the identity she obtained was fake. Li-ru criticized Yumi. Yumi is the one who killed me, and cursed that Yumi would live in hell. After saying this, she turned and left. Since the incident with Yumin, the couple's relationship had become increasingly inseparable. Yumi also became increasingly disgusted with her husband. When they were alone, the couple removed their masks. Yumi mentioned Ji-hoon's ex-wife and child. Ji-hoon then told Yumi she was the daughter of a tailor shop owner. When they mentioned Li-ru, Ji-hoon thought he had solved the obstacles for her. So you should thank him. But Yumi disagreed with his behavior. Ji-hoon suddenly got angry and grabbed Yumi's neck. When she was about to suffocate, he let go. Ji-hoon whispered in her ear that he didn't want Li-ru to die either, but since it happened, Yumi was also an accomplice. Even though negative news about Ji-hoon broke out, his approval rating had increased significantly. Major news outlets were also reporting on Yumi's image. After that, Yumi was frequently interviewed. She used her acting skills to talk about the rumors regarding the thesis, saying she wasn't involved in this matter. As for Ji-hoon's sick child, she didn't want children to become subjects of criticism. Elsewhere, Ji-hoon's subordinate reported that the amount of money Yumi received from others had reached 3 billion won. Upon hearing this, Ji-hoon immediately contacted a mental hospital, saying that Yumi had problems, and after the election, he wanted to send her there. Yumi also had her own plan. She took the initiative to find Ji-won, hoping for help. Ji-won admitted that she knew Yumi had used someone else's identity. Yumi explained that her life was too difficult, so she was always envious of Li-ru's life. This led her to embark on a path of deception. Yumi took out the USU with evidence, which also included information about Yumi using Li-ru's identity, and evidence that Li-ru was murdered, as well as proof that Ji-hoon's ex-wife didn't die in an accident. There was also evidence of Ji-hoon manipulating stock prices, embezzling, and evading taxes. The previous hot searches on Ji-hoon and the ghostwriter were also orchestrated by Yumi. Unfortunately, in the end, Ji-hoon managed to suppress it all. Yumi had to switch to another plan. After finishing her preparations, Yumi went to visit her mother in a nursing home. Her mother, suffering from Alzheimer's, no longer recognized Yumi. She always thought her daughter was still in America. She even asked Yumi to write a letter to her daughter. Yumi felt sad inside. On the way home, Yumi asked the secretary, "If something happens to me, please ask the person to take care of my mother." The election results would soon be announced. Yumi received a call from the nursing home, saying her mother was looking for her. Sensing something was wrong, Yumi's mood hit rock bottom. Right at that moment, news of Ji-hoon becoming the mayor of Seoul was broadcast on TV. Everyone was overjoyed, but Yumi looked sad, completely opposite to the joyful crowd celebrating. After the successful election, Ji-hoon wanted to go to the US as soon as possible to pick up his son. After Ji-won received a reminder message from Yumi, she contacted the prosecutor. Ji-hoon had just finished his campaign. He planned to go to the airport with Yumi immediately. But Yumi stopped him. She said her mother was seriously ill in a nursing home and wanted to go there. At this moment, Ji-hoon still joked and said, "Your mother is in America," which made her very scared. Ji-hoon didn't want to let her go at this crucial moment. Yumi had no choice but to board the plane to the US with Ji-hoon. On the plane, Yumi received news that her mother had passed away. She suddenly broke down emotionally, unable to hold back her tears. Upon arriving in the US, Ji-hoon specifically requested Yumi's passport to rent a car. Then, he drove Yumi to his son's place. On the way, Yumi receives a message saying that there's an official helping Ji-hoon in stopping the prosecutor. Yumi sighed. He made an unreasonable request for Yumi to take a break for a while. "Recently, you have done some extreme things." Yumi suddenly realized that this time Ji-hoon wasn't here to pick up his son, but to imprison her. Ji-hoon straightforwardly admitted it. She panicked and looked at Ji-hoon, realizing he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. Looking at the handbrake, Yumi's mind began to calculate. At that moment, Ji-hoon turned back to look at Yumi and accidentally saw a deer in front of them. He quickly searched for a direction. She quickly pulled the brake, and the car suddenly lost control and crashed into a telephone pole on the side of the road. Yumi trembled as she stepped out of the car. After calming down, she took Ji-hoon's passport. Ji-hoon was stuck in the driver's seat, shouting at Yumi to help him. But Yumi remained still. She walked far away to find a phone signal. A moment later, she received a message from Ji-won that their plan had failed. The prosecutor's office was completely unreliable. At this moment, Ji-won, who was angry at the prosecutor's office, climbed out of a window to attract attention, escaping from those who wanted to capture her. After Yumi received the news, she was very disappointed. If justice couldn't defeat evil, she would turn herself into a dark flame to do what was right. Because once she was determined to do something, she would definitely do it. And so, Yumi burned the silk scarf hanging on her bag and walked toward Ji-hoon. The news of Ji-hoon's death quickly spread while Yumi disappeared. Not long after, Ji-hoon's funeral was held, but it was very deserted. Aside from the reporters, only his autistic son was playing nearby. Years later, in the snow-covered country of Canada, Anna pulled a cart full of firewood back to her small house. It turns out she had walked from America to Canada by herself. Anna removed her heavy clothes, revealing her haggard face. Remembering that day in the firelight, she threw her bag and lighter into the car, ignoring Ji-hoon's screams. She just kept walking without looking back, thinking about the past. Yumi screamed in pain. The film ends here. Please like and comment with your thoughts. Goodbye and see you again.